Okay.
And then you were also going to say something to follow up with Matthew.
Just a couple of things too. I think that one thing and again, of course, any system could always be improved upon. I think that that's a fair point by several of the comments that have been stated in regards to the mail-in ballots. But the other thing I think that we're kind of discounting is that we have had a massive information campaign about mail-in ballots. People were given a lot of notice in advance about the mail-in voting system. I mean, this is not something that was done just 30 days before the election. This was something where voters were notified months before the election. They received their ballot 3 weeks. We've had tons of public service campaigns, tons of things on social media, tons of things through the news. And so the idea that it would just be so confusing for people, I'm not saying that there might not be a level of confusion, but there's also been a lot of education on voting by mail that I think that we're discounting. And again, the more we do it, the better that we'll get at it, right? And we'll improve the process. And then on the flip side, for the comment in regards that for older people, it can be difficult. In some ways, one could argue for some elderly people who aren't as mobile or may not have a way to get to the polls, the mail-in ballot can be a very good way for them to practice and safe way for them to practice the franchise.
And just a follow-up question to that, do you think that we've already seen some disinformation or misinformation about the safety of mail-in voting? And do you think we've seen that here in Kern County?
You know, in particular in Kern County, I think we've seen probably about the same that we've seen throughout the country, just with the rhetoric that we have seen the administration give in regards to not being able to trust voter by mail, that it's more susceptible to fraud. I think that that's some of the rhetoric that we have heard in different parts of the country, not just necessarily into Kern County. And I think that that's partly because that is coming from leadership, and that's also in part because we have not exercised the franchise in such a wide capacity in regards to voting by mail. So it may lead to some false assumptions, for example. But in terms of election security, we've also had new mechanisms be established where now, I mailed in my ballot, and in 2 days I could go onto the Secretary of State's website on my phone. And I even saw Vince Fong was very good about advertising this information to his constituents. He's my member of the State Assembly. And you could go ahead, you could see the date that it was received, and you could verify that it was counted. And if it wasn't counted, it even gave you a link and additional information for you to follow up on your ballot.
So you think that the state overall has done a good job in informing
I think they've done the best that
voting?
they can given the circumstances that we're in, the unprecedented circumstances that we're in.
Perfect. Thank you guys so much. And we'll come back to our panel in just a second. Coming up in a little bit, we'll talk about the Senate and congressional races that are going on, as well as the integrity of the election. And we're going to discuss disinformation and misinformation, the difference between the two, and have we seen any, and will it impact this election? But for now, I'm going to send it back over to you, Jess and Mike.